Hi guys, I'm here with you a story from the good old days. This one's by Barbara C. Thomas, and it's called Ross's Food Market. Two special shop owners made their mark on her childhood. And this was in 30s and 40s. Mr. and Mrs. Ross were special people to me as I grew up in St. Augustine, Florida in the 1930s and 40s. They owned and operated Ross's Food Mart, a small country store that my mother faithfully patronized. It was located on San Marco Avenue across from Davenport Park, about 1 mile from the downtown area of the old city. Besides canned and packaged goods and fresh fruits and vegetables, they carried all kinds of meats, carefully cut and trimmed by Mr. Ross, the butcher, except for fresh seafood, which my mother bought off the docks. We purchased all our groceries from Ross's Food Market. Mrs. Ross was a sweet, matrona lady with a motherly smile. She stayed busy filling customer orders, fetching items from the shelf and placing them on the long counter, and then adding up the tab with a pencil. She also took orders by phone from people who lived nearby and wanted their groceries delivered. The delivery boy was usually a teenager who had a specially designed bicycle with a small front tire that made room for an oversized basket that held several paper bags of groceries. The boy worked for tips. I can still hear Mrs. Ross answering her phone. "Ross's Food Market," she would chirp in her clipped German accent. She would make a list of the requests, fill the orders from the shelves, and send the delivery boy on his way. Mr. Ross was one of the kindest, gentlest men I have ever known, and he always greeted us with a big smile. Invariably, he would offer my sister and me a treat from his display case. Wiping his hands on his white apron, he would yield his huge butcher knife and slice a paper-thin sample of luncheon meat, or perhaps cheddar cheese. We relished those delicious tidbits from Mr. Ross. My mother died when I was 11, and even though my father still shopped at Ross's, we were seldom with him. I miss seeing Mr. and Mrs. Ross on a regular basis. After my father's death 2 years later, my sister and I were placed in an orphanage in South Carolina to finish growing up. When I was 15 and my sister was 13, we were treated with a summer trip to St. Augustine, because visiting old friends and places, we stopped by Ross's Market to visit Mr. and Mrs. Ross. I will never forget how glad they were to see us and how happy they were to know we were being well taken care of. As we bid them goodbye, big tears rolled down Mr. Ross's cheeks. That was the last time I saw him. On a later visit to St. Augustine, I was saddened to see that the strip of buildings that housed the old grocery store was gone. Because of Mr. and Mrs. Ross and Ross's Food Market, my memories of the good old days are so much richer. Now, I thought that was a good story. And here's a picture of the author and her sister. Barbara and her younger sister Joy are all smiles in downtown St. Augustine in 1940. That's what the picture says. Now, I thought that was a really good story. I hope you guys enjoyed it too, and I hope you guys have a great night. Bye, guys.